On the same afternoon, the government mailed my wife her 10-year green card. She slid divorce papers across our kitchen table and said, "Thank you for everything, Mark. I think we're done here." 5 years later, an immigration officer called and asked if I wanted to help them decide whether she got to keep that green card or not. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Mark. I'm 35 now. Back then, I was 27, working maintenance at a big hotel in Chicago. Not glamorous, but it was stable. Good benefits, decent pay, and I was the guy everyone called when something was broken and needed fixing. Funny thing is, I could fix everything except the one thing that mattered most, my marriage. I met Lucia on a random Tuesday night in a Facebook group for language exchange. She was from Brazil, living on a student visa in the US for a business program. I was just some American guy trying to remember high school Spanish and feeling lonely in a studio apartment. She messaged me first. "Hi, Mark. Do you want to practice English with me? I help you with Portuguese." Her profile picture was this blurry selfie on a beach at sunset. Big brown eyes, messy hair in a bun, smile that looked like she'd just told a joke and was waiting to see if you got it. We talked for 4 hours that first night. Not about visas. Not about marriage. Not about anything serious, really. Just food, music, weird differences between our countries. How she thought American peanut butter tasted like sweet dirt, and I thought her obsession with mayonnaise on pizza was a crime. We moved from Facebook to WhatsApp, then to video calls. One call turned into two, turned into every night. You know how they say lonely people fall the hardest? Yeah, that was me. The first time we met in person, it felt like I'd already known her for years. She came to Chicago on a cheap overnight bus from her college town, just for a weekend. I picked her up from the station holding one of those dumb little cardboard signs with her name on it as a joke. She ran up, dropped her suitcase, and hugged me like we were in a movie. "You're taller than camera," she laughed into my chest. We did all the tourist stuff that weekend. Navy Pier, deep dish pizza, walking by the lake until our faces went numb from the cold. She clung to my arm like she was freezing, and I pretended I wasn't insanely aware of every place we were touching. At night, she fell asleep on my shoulder while we watched Netflix on my beat-up couch. I remember looking down at her and thinking, I could do this for the rest of my life. She left on Sunday night. I went back to my empty apartment, and it felt wrong. Too quiet, too big, too empty, without her messy suitcase on the floor and her half-finished iced coffee on my counter. 3 days later, she called me crying. "My landlord is crazy. Rent is going up. I cannot afford anymore. I don't know what to do." I heard the fear in her voice, and that part of me that always wants to fix things kicked in. "Move here. We'll figure it out. You can transfer your program. You won't be alone." Looking back, that was the first big fork in the road. Her transfer went through faster than either of us expected. A month later, she rolled into my apartment with 2 suitcases, a backpack, and way too many shoes. "You sure? You want roommate who sings and shower?" she teased in the doorway. "Depends on the song," I joked. She moved in that day, and for a while, it was perfect. We cooked dinner together, her teaching me Brazilian recipes, me teaching her how to make proper pancakes. She'd sit on the counter kicking her feet while I washed dishes, talking about her classes and how weird Americans were. We had inside jokes, stupid little rituals. Friday night pizza. Sunday morning grocery store runs where she'd sneak random snacks into the cart when she thought I wasn't looking. At night, she'd study at the tiny kitchen table while I watched TV, then slide over to the couch and fall asleep with her head in my lap. I'd look down at her and think, this is it. This is home. The visa stuff started like background noise. Every now and then she'd mention it, chewing on a pen cap while filling out some form. Student visa only for 2 more years. After that, I don't know. I'd ask what her options were. She'd just shrug. Maybe work visa if company sponsor. Maybe go back home. I don't want to think. It makes my stomach. She'd twist her hand like something was being wrung out inside her. I hated seeing her anxious. So I did what I always do when something scares me. I tried to ignore it. We didn't talk about marriage back then. We talked about trips we wanted to take. What kind of dog we'd get someday. How she wanted a tiny house near the beach. But time has a way of speeding up when you're happy. Her graduation came faster than either of us expected. One minute I was making fun of her for pulling all-nighters. The next, I was sitting in a folding chair in a gymnasium, watching her walk across a stage in a cap and gown while Pomp and Circumstance played on loop. After the ceremony, she hugged me so hard my ribs creaked. You proud of me?" Her eyes were shining. "More than you know." That night, sitting on our couch with takeout containers between us, reality finally crashed the party. Her student visa was valid for one more year after graduation. OPT, they called it. Optional practical training. A fancy term for, you have 12 months to find someone willing to sponsor you, or you're gone. She landed a job at a small marketing firm downtown. Nothing huge, but it was something. We celebrated like she'd just become CEO. A few months in, her boss pulled her aside and told her the truth. "We love you, Lucia, but we're too small to sponsor a foreign worker. We can't afford the legal fees. When your OPT is up, we can't keep you." She came home that day quieter than I'd ever seen her. We were eating dinner, some pasta I'd probably overcooked, when she set down her fork and spoke very softly. "If I go back, that's it, you know." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "Going back home. Brazil. If I go, I don't come back. Visa again? Too hard. Too expensive. And long distance." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Long distance kills most relationships. We both knew that. Maybe there's another way. That one line changed everything. We didn't jump straight to marriage. We actually tried to avoid it. We met with an immigration lawyer first. I remember sitting in that cold office, listening while this guy in a suit explained all the different visa categories like he was reading off a menu. Work visa? She needs a company sponsor, minimum salary, lottery system, odds are low. Student again? Sure, if you want more debt and no path to permanent residency. Finally he got to family sponsorship. Spousal visa. Marriage to a U.S. citizen is the most straightforward path to a green card. He said it like it was nothing. Just paperwork. But it wasn't nothing to me. It was marriage. I wanted to propose because I loved her, not because the government gave us a deadline. On the train ride home, she stared out the window. "I don't want you to feel pressure," she said eventually. "I don't want you to marry me because of paper. I'm not. If we do this, it'll be because I want to. Because I already decided I want you here. With me." She turned slowly, eyes shining. "You already decided?" "Yeah. I think I decided the day you stole my fries on our first date." She laughed, choked a little, wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her coat. We didn't have some dramatic movie-style proposal. No rose petals or flash mobs. Just me, her, our tiny apartment, and a ring I'd spent 3 months saving for sitting in a little box on the kitchen counter. She cried. I cried. We told our parents. Hers were happy because America is opportunity. Mine were happy because I was happy. It felt right. It felt like love. The immigration process is like signing up for the world's least fun reality show where you're always being watched and nothing ever happens on time. We filled out forms, gathered photos, printed out text messages, proved to the government that we were real, that we'd lived together, that we'd traveled together, that our relationship wasn't a scam. I took time off work for the interview. We sat in a gray room with a tired officer who flipped through our file like it was one of a million. Questions about how we met, what side of the bed she slept on, what kind of toothpaste we used. Under the table, Lucia squeezed my hand so hard my fingers went numb. At the end, the officer closed the folder. Looks good. You'll get a decision in the mail. 2 months later, a letter arrived. Conditional permanent residence. 2-year green card. The lawyer told me when I called. At the end of 2 years, you file to remove conditions, prove you're still married, and she gets the 10-year card. Sounded simple enough. 2 years? We'd already done 3 together. What was 2 more? Turns out, a lot can happen in 2 years. The first 6 months of our marriage were fine. Not perfect. Not terrible. Just different. It wasn't like a switch flipped overnight. But looking back, there were small changes I didn't want to see. Lucia started going out more. At first it was normal stuff. Girls' night, with coworkers. Networking events. English practice meetups. I'd be home fixing a leaky faucet or cooking dinner while my phone lit up with selfies from some downtown rooftop. You can come, she'd offer. But the way it came out made it clear she didn't really expect me to. The wardrobe shifted next. Nicer clothes. Heels she'd never worn with me. Dresses that made my eyes pop out of my head when she walked out of the bedroom. Wow. Who are you dressing up for? Myself. That answer should have comforted me. It didn't. Our fight started small. Dishes. Trash. Whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. Whether I understood how hard it was for her to be in a new country. I tried to fix everything the same way I fixed leaky pipes, by jumping in first. Apologizing even when I didn't know what I'd done wrong. She started sleeping facing the wall. Stopped reaching for my hand when we crossed the street. Stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. I told myself it was stress. Culture shock. Normal marriage adjustment. I didn't let myself consider the other options. Year 1 of marriage came and went. We celebrated with takeout on the couch because she was too tired to go out. She scrolled through Instagram while we ate. I can still picture the blue glow of her phone on her face, the way she laughed at something that had nothing to do with me. When it was time to file for her 10-year green card, I did most of the paperwork myself. Lucia barely glanced at it. Sign here, I'd say, sliding forms over while she watched Netflix. Her pen moved on autopilot. We sent in new photos, bank statements, lease renewals, all the proof that we were still married in every legal sense, even if most days it didn't feel like it. A part of me hoped that once she got the 10-year card, the pressure would ease, that she'd relax, that she'd stop looking over her shoulder waiting for someone to take this life away, that maybe she'd come back to me. I was wrong. If anything, things got worse. She started staying out later, stopped telling me where she was going. Her phone was suddenly always on silent, face down on the table. Her lock screen changed from a picture of us to a generic quote. Everything okay? I'd ask. I'm just tired of feeling stuck. In what way? In every way. By the time I thought about pushing harder, the approval notice showed up. I remember thinking, finally, we made it. On my way up from the lobby, I flipped through the mail and nearly dropped everything when I saw the return address. Big white envelope from USCIS with her name on it. Babe, it's here. She appeared from the bedroom, wiping her hands on a dish towel, face impossible to read. We opened it together at the kitchen table like it was a college acceptance letter. Congratulations. Your conditions have been removed. Your new card will arrive within 30 days. I hooped. Lucia smiled. A small, tight curve of her mouth. This is good, right? This is what we've been waiting for. Yeah, it's good. Something in her expression scared me. Like I'd just opened a door I thought led outside, and instead saw a brick wall. 2 weeks later, the actual card showed up. 10 years. Permanent resident. No more conditions. I held it in my hand. This little green plastic rectangle that had cost us years of stress and thousands of dollars, and more emotional energy than I could measure. Lucia took it, studied it for a long moment, then slipped it into her wallet. Now you don't have to worry, I joked weakly. You're officially here forever. She looked up with an expression I still can't fully describe. Relief. Guilt. Freedom. That night, she came home late. Later than usual. Later than one more drink late. It was almost midnight when I heard her keys in the lock. I'd been pacing the living room with the TV on mute, replaying every weird moment of the last year in my head. She walked in with smudged makeup, messy hair, and the faint smell of a bar clinging to her clothes. We need to talk, she said, dropping her purse on the counter. My stomach dropped. About what? About us. My hands started to shake. I sat at the kitchen table. Okay, talk. She didn't sit. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out a manila envelope, and slid it across the table. I already knew what it was. I opened it anyway. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The top page read. My ears started ringing. What is this? I'm filing for divorce. I already talked to a lawyer. You just need to sign. The 10-year green card had arrived in the mail that morning. The divorce papers landed on our kitchen table that night. And as I stared at that stack of documents, one thought pushed its way through the static in my brain. Did she ever love me? Or did she just need me long enough to stay? I'll tell you what I said to her. How I lost my marriage before I even processed it was over. How I hit rock bottom. And how 5 years later, that same government that once needed my proof of love called and asked if I wanted to help them tear down the life she'd built on that green card. But that part comes next. I didn't say anything for a full minute. Just sat there with the divorce papers in my hands while Lucia stood in the kitchen like she was waiting for a delivery confirmation. Say something, she whispered. My mouth was dry. The words finally came out. What do you even say when your whole life just got downgraded to a stack of forms? The only thing in my head was the timing. 10-year green card that morning. Divorce papers that night. There was no universe where that felt like an accident. I kept staring at the petition. Her name. My name. The date. The boxes checked, the generic legal language. It looked so boring. Nothing on those pages said, this man watched you fall asleep on his chest every night for years. Nothing said, This woman used to cry laughing at cereal commercials because her English was still catching up. Just 2 names and a request to split. Eventually, I pushed the papers away. If I kept looking at them, I was going to throw up on them. Lucia leaned back against the counter, arms folded like she was bracing for impact. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't ask her to stay. Some part of me knew the begging phase would only humiliate me and drag this out. So I asked the one question I could manage. How long has our marriage been over in your head? She stared at the floor. The answer hurt more than the papers. It had been years for her. Years of going through the motions while I was still trying to fix leaks in a boat she'd already decided to abandon. She admitted there was someone else. A coworker. Someone who understood the immigrant pressure. Someone whose family had done this before. Someone who, very conveniently, already had the right passport. I felt something crack and go quiet inside me. The arguments, the distance, the late nights, the phone flipped face down. It all suddenly lined up like dominoes that had just been pushed. I didn't have the energy to argue with that reality. I'm not going to drag you through a war, I finally said. If you want out, you're out. She blinked, almost surprised at how fast the door opened once she touched the handle. No fight over money. No long negotiation. We never owned a house. No kids. No shared retirement. Just IKEA furniture and a few shared bills. All the big things had always been on my shoulders anyway. When are you leaving? I asked. Her instinct was to drag it out, make it gradual, keep one foot in the doorway while she figured things out. I couldn't live with that. So I drew the only hard boundary I had left. This ends now. She packed one suitcase. The rest stayed behind like a museum exhibit of our old life. Before she stepped out the door, she said she had loved me once. She hoped I believed that. I didn't give her a dramatic speech. Didn't offer forgiveness. Didn't curse her out. Just told her goodbye. She left. The door closed. And for a long time, I just sat there at the kitchen table with an indentation on the wood where the divorce papers had been. It took 3 days for the shock to wear off and the real pain to hit. Divorce isn't one big explosion. It's a million tiny aftershocks. Reaching for a second plate when you cook and realizing you don't need it. Opening the closet and seeing empty hangers where her dresses used to be. Finding one of her hairs on your pillow weeks later and feeling your chest seize like you just ran into a wall. I couldn't stay in that apartment. Not with her coffee mug still in the cabinet and her slippers under the couch. My older brother, Tom, had a spare room that usually smelled like gym shoes and takeout, but it was far away from our usual grocery store, our usual train line, our usual everything. That's exactly what I needed. You want me to go find this Miguel guy? Tom offered that first night, cracking his knuckles. It almost made me laugh. He didn't kidnap her, I said. She walked. Underneath the anger, there was shame. Shame that I hadn't seen it. Shame that everyone who warned me to be careful with immigration marriages had just been handed a perfect little case study. Shame that I had turned myself into the safest bridge possible and then watched her cross and never looked back. The divorce itself was fast. A few signatures. A court I didn't even go to. A piece of paper in the mail saying I was legally single again. The same government that once demanded proof of our love now had proof of its death. Lucia didn't call, didn't text, didn't reach out for closure. She just disappeared into her new life like ours had been a practice round. So I blocked her on everything. Not out of revenge. Out of self-defense. Every time her name popped up, my lungs forgot how to work. I changed grocery stores. Took different streets. Stopped going to the lakefront we used to walk along. It felt like she'd claimed half the city by association, but it made breathing easier. Work was the only place that still made sense. Pipes leaked. AC units died. Guests got locked out of rooms. Everything was still fixable if you had the right wrench. Everything except me. The turning point didn't show up in a therapist's office or some inspirational quote. It came from a leaky ceiling in room 1423. 6 months after the divorce, I was on a ladder patching a drip over the desk while the guest, a woman in her 30s, moved her laptop out of the splash zone. Take your time, she said. I'm just happy someone's actually fixing something. Her screen caught my eye. Project management software. Columns of tasks. Automations. Workflows. You in tech? I asked. Kind of. Process consulting, she said. I help companies stop wasting time doing things by hand when a script can do it better. She started describing what she built. Halfway through, my brain tilted. Because a lot of the little tools she was talking about, I'd built versions of them before, just for myself. Scripts to autofill forms. Little bots to send reminders. Tiny tools I'd used for Lucia's job back when we were trying to make her look like a superhero at work. I climbed down from the ladder with my mind buzzing harder than the drill in my hand. That night, instead of staring at a muted TV on my brother's couch, I opened my old laptop. All my dusty projects were still there. Directories full of code. Half-finished dashboards. Automations I'd built to make my own life easier. I looked at them and realized something I hadn't let myself think. Lucia might have walked off with the life we built together, but she hadn't taken the skills I developed building it. That part was still mine. I made a decision right there in that ugly guest room with the leaky ceiling. I was going to rebuild. Not for her. Not to flex on Instagram. For me. The next year was brutal in a different way. I worked my hotel shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., grabbed something cheap to eat, then sat at a wobbly desk in Tom's spare room until midnight, writing code. Not chasing some billion-dollar unicorn startup this time. Just fixing real problems for real businesses. Dentists who needed appointment reminders. Small law firms drowning in scanned PDFs. Logistics offices buried under spreadsheets. I threw up a basic website with an awful name, Automation for Humans, and a simple promise. I'll make your boring computer work less boring. My first client paid me $500. It might as well have been $1 million. Job by job, referral by referral, my nights started to matter. By the end of year 1, my side thing was making more than the hotel. By the end of year 2, I quit my maintenance job. My manager shook my hand and told me he'd always known I was too smart to be crawling in ceilings forever. I rented a tiny one-bedroom across town. Bought my own furniture with money I'd earned from my own clients. Hung up pictures with no ghosts in them. No wedding photo. No visa interview shots. Just landscapes, a couple of dumb posters, and eventually a framed printout of my first invoice. I turned Automation for Humans into a real company with a better name, a real logo, and eventually an actual employee. We focused on workflow automation for small and mid-sized businesses. The same kind of software rich guys used to roll their eyes at when I tried to explain it at dinners with Lucia's friends was now the thing their companies were paying good money for. That irony was not lost on me. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I met Emma. She wasn't some magical savior who fixed my trauma with a quirky laugh. She was a project manager at a logistics firm we were helping. Sharp, dry sense of humor. No time for buzzwords. She asked better questions about my tools than most CEOs. After one meeting, we ended up talking in the parking lot about coffee, terrible clients, and which childhood cartoons had the weirdest hidden adult jokes. It was easy. She didn't know anything about Lucia. Didn't know she was standing across from a guy who'd once sat in an immigration office trying to convince a stranger his love was real. She just saw someone who built things that made her workday less miserable. 6 months later, I asked her out. 3 dates in, sitting on a park bench with cheap coffee, I told her the whole story. No filters. No crazy ex spin. Just what happened. She listened quietly. Wow, she said finally. She really played the long game. I was the idiot who bought the tickets, I said. You weren't an idiot, she corrected me. You were loyal. Just loyal in the wrong direction. That line lodged itself somewhere deep. Because she was right. I was still that guy. The one who overcared, overprepared, did the paperwork, showed up early, stayed late. The difference now was who I was giving that version of myself to. For a while, life was just good. Boring in the best way. Clients. Deadlines. Date nights. Grocery runs. Fixing my own leaky sink for once. Lucia became less like an open wound and more like a scar I only noticed in certain lighting. Then, 5 years after she slid those divorce papers across my kitchen table, the U.S. government called. Mr. Reynolds, we're reviewing your ex-wife's immigration history, the officer said. We wanted to ask if you'd be willing to provide information about the nature of your marriage. And just like that, I had something I'd never had in that relationship before. Power. The question was, what was I going to do with it? I didn't answer the officer right away. Just sat there with the phone to my ear, staring at the wall like the paint might give me instructions. He repeated the question, patient and bureaucratic. Would I be willing to provide information about the nature of my marriage? I asked what that even meant. He explained it in official language. They were reviewing Lucia's immigration history in connection with a current application. They couldn't share details, but I was listed as a relevant party. My cooperation was voluntary. Voluntary. So it wasn't help us or else. It was help us if you can live with what happens next. He started with simple stuff when I agreed. When did we meet? When did we marry? Did we live together? Were we in a relationship before the visa? All the basics. I answered honestly. Then came the question that dug under my ribs. At the time you first married, did you believe the relationship was genuine? Absolutely. At the time of the first green card interview? Yes. At the time you both filed to remove conditions for the 10-year card? That one took longer. Because on paper we were still a couple. In practice, we were already drifting. I still believed it then, I finally said. Or I needed to believe it. I knew things were off, but I thought we'd fix them. He typed for a bit, then asked what changed. So I walked him through it. The approval notice. The 10-year card arriving in the mail. The divorce papers hitting the kitchen table that same night. The conversation where Lucia admitted she hadn't loved me the way I loved her for a long time, and had stayed because she was terrified of losing status and starting over. The coworker. The affair. The exit strategy. The officer listened quietly and asked if I had any documentation, texts, notes, timelines. I did. Screenshots I'd sent my brother in a daze. The approval notice. The date stamped on the divorce petition. He gave me an email address. Told me I wasn't required to send anything. But if I chose to, it would help them make an accurate determination. Accurate. That word stuck in my throat. We wrapped up. I hung up. Sat at my desk with my laptop open and a blank email draft staring back at me. Emma came home to find me frozen like that. One look at my face and she dropped her bag and came over. I told her everything. Call, questions, what they were investigating, what they'd asked me to send. So if you send it, she said slowly, there's a chance they revoke her status. Yeah. And if you don't, then they make a decision without hearing my side, I said. Maybe she keeps everything. Maybe she gets kicked out anyway because of whatever they already found. Maybe nothing happens. I don't know. We sat there in silence for a minute. If this was some stranger, she said gently, and not your ex, what would you say? Should someone be able to stay in a country by using a person they don't really love and ditching them the second they're safe? My answer was immediate. No. Second question, she went on. Are you responsible for her choices? The affair. The timing. Whatever she told other people. No again. You're not doing something to her, Emma said. You're just telling the truth about what happened to you. What immigration does with that truth is on them. What she did to get into this mess is on her. It sounded logical. It did not feel simple. I opened the folder, dragged in the screenshots, the approval dates, a short explanation of the timeline. Sat there with my finger hovering over the trackpad, thinking about Lucia at that bus station years ago, clutching a backpack and grinning at skyscrapers like they were miracles. Then I thought about the green card in her wallet and the divorce envelope on my table. I hit send. No dramatic music. No instant feeling of justice. Just an email leaving my outbox and a nauseous pit in my stomach. Then nothing. Weeks passed. Then months. No follow-up calls. No letters. Life kept going. The business grew. Emma and I moved into a bigger apartment with actual sunlight and a parking space that didn't involve gambling on street cleaning signs. We adopted a mutt from the shelter who decided I was his one true human and followed me room to room like a furry bodyguard. I still thought about Lucia sometimes, but it was different now. Less, I can't believe she did that, and more, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. Then one Thursday, 5 minutes before a Zoom demo, my receptionist buzzed me. Hey, Mark, there's someone here asking for you. No appointment. Normally that's an automatic, get their email, and we'll schedule. Name? I asked, still half looking at my calendar. Lucia, she said quietly. She says she's your ex-wife. For a second, everything in my field of vision blurred. I told her to send Lucia in. Seeing her walk into my office after all that time felt like someone had opened a freezer door inside my chest. She looked older. Not in a wow, time hit you hard way, more in a you've been carrying something heavy for a long time way. Thinner. Dark circles. Hair pulled back in a knot that wasn't styled, just contained. Her eyes swept the room. The framed client logos. The whiteboard. The photo of me and Emma with the dog at the lake. She took it all in, and I could see the calculation. You look different, she said. Good. Successful. I stayed behind my desk. What do you want, Lucia? She asked if she could sit. Clutched her bag like a life jacket. Took a breath that shook a little. Immigration had contacted her. They'd shown her parts of the file. She knew I talked to them. They have evidence, she said. About the timing. About what I told you. About the other guy. Her status was under review. She was in removal proceedings. Not in detention, not in handcuffs, but one bad hearing away from a plane ride back to a country she hadn't lived in for years. And she wanted me to clarify. Not lie exactly. Just soften. Emphasize the good parts. Make it sound messy, but romantic instead of calculated and ugly. She wanted me to help save her. Again, that was the part that hit. Because it was the same pattern. Who filled out her paperwork? Who sat through interviews? Who proofread her emails? Helped her understand bills? Fixed everything that broke? Me. Now the system she'd leaned on was turning around to ask questions, and she'd come back to the same place she always went when she was scared. The guy she didn't love enough to stay with, but cared enough to keep using when it mattered. I already told them the good parts, I said. I told them our marriage started real. That I loved you. That we lived together. That we had a life. She stared at me, confused and hopeful at the same time. Then why are they doing this? Because they also asked why it ended, I said. And I told them that too. Her jaw clenched. I could see anger trying to punch its way out past fear. You could have left that part out. You could have not slipped me divorce papers on approval day, I said. We all pick our lines in the story. She went quiet for a long moment. Then the dam broke. Miguel left. His family never fully accepted her. The interviews spooked him. He didn't want to be dragged into whatever immigration storm was brewing. He bailed. She was on her own. She admitted she'd made mistakes. That she'd been selfish. That fear had been driving the wheel way more than malice. And honestly, I believe that. She wasn't some cartoon villain twirling a mustache, plotting visa fraud on a chalkboard. She was a scared 20-something who made survival her god and sacrificed people to it. That doesn't make the knife less sharp when it's in your back. She asked me again, point blank, to help, to call her lawyer, to write a letter, to show up at a hearing and talk about how we were once happy. I thought about it, not just in that moment, but in all the quiet ones after. Who am I if I refuse? Who am I if I bend? Would I be doing it because I truly felt it was right, or because some old, guilty part of me still felt responsible for her? In that office, looking at her for the first time in years, I realized something simple and ugly. If I stepped in again, I'd be replaying the exact same role I'd already played once. The fixer, the buffer between her and consequences. The guy who bled so she could stand. So I drew a line. I told her I wasn't going to lie. I wasn't going to say it was all some misunderstanding, or that she'd never admitted what she admitted, or that the timing was purely random. The most I'd already done, told the truth that we were real once and broken later. She called it unfair, said I was ruining her life because I was still hurt. But her life had been built on multiple people bending rules, bending trust, bending themselves. I was the one person in the chain finally refusing to bend. She asked one more question before leaving. Do you ever miss me? 5 years earlier, that question would have split me open. Sitting there, surrounded by a life I'd built with my own hands, with a woman who'd chosen me for who I was at my lowest, I realized the answer was no. Not her. Not the way she was. I missed the idea of who I thought she was. The girl on the bus, the beach photos, the laughter in the tiny kitchen. But the person in my office wasn't that girl. She was the result of all the choices made after. I told her I hoped she found peace. Told her I forgave her. But forgiveness isn't the same as rescue. And it definitely isn't the same as perjury. She left my office quietly. No slammed doors. No final dramatic monologue. Just a soft goodbye and a broken look at the photo of me and Emma as she walked out. The air felt different after the door clicked shut. Lighter. Heavier. Both. Emma came in a minute later, because my team apparently decided someone should go check if the boss had exploded. She didn't say, "I told you so." Just wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind and waited for my pulse to come back down. You okay? She asked eventually. Yeah, I said. And for once, it wasn't automatic. It was true. Months later, a postcard arrived. No return address. Just a picture of a Brazilian city I recognized from Lucia's stories. The handwriting on the back was familiar. She said she was teaching English now. That life was different, not all bad. That she'd heard I got engaged and was glad. She told me not to worry about her anymore. I took the card, read it twice, then dropped it in the box where I keep old immigration documents. Not on the fridge. Not in the trash. Just filed. Like a finished chapter. Emma and I got married in a park the next spring. No government folders. No legal strategy meetings. Just our families, a handful of friends, and a judge who mispronounced my last name twice before getting it right. We went home after, still in dress and suit, sat on our stairs, and ate leftover cake with plastic forks. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder. You thinking about her? She asked, not accusing, just curious. A little, I admitted. Not in the old way. More in the if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here way. She nodded. Do you ever wish it had gone differently? She asked. Like, wish you'd never met her at all. I thought about it. If I erased Lucia, I'd erase Chicago that year. Those late-night chats that kept me from going crazy in a silent apartment. The push that forced me into coding, into business, into learning my own limits. I'd erase the scar, but I'd probably erase half the person I'd become too. I wish I'd listened to myself sooner, I said. But no, I don't wish her away. I just finally know which part of my life she belongs to. Emma smiled. You know what I like about you? She said. My charming inability to decorate an apartment. I said, that, she laughed. But also, you didn't let what she did turn you into someone cold. You're still the guy who overprepares, who cares too much, who fills out forms for nervous clients. You didn't become the villain in reaction to someone else's bad chapter. I looked at our joined hands. Her wedding ring sat beside mine. No government stamp needed. Just two people who chose to stay. Real love, I realized, doesn't require a nationality test. But it does require mutual risk. Two people willing to be there when it's boring, when it's hard, when there is absolutely nothing in it for them except the other person's well-being. Lucia had loved survival more than she loved us. Emma loved us more than she loved comfort. And me? I finally loved myself enough to stop being a stepping stone. So yeah, my wife used me to get the life she thought she wanted, left me the night she no longer needed my name, and came back years later when that life started to crack. I had a chance to save her again. This time, I chose to save myself. Do I think she's evil? No. Do I think the immigration system forces people into impossible choices that twist them into worse versions of themselves? Definitely. But the system is harsh, doesn't erase the people you hurt on the way to safety. Lucia taught me the cost of blind loyalty. Emma taught me the value of shared commitment. And somewhere between those two stories, I figured out the kind of man I actually am. What about you? Would you have done what I did? Told the truth even knowing it might get your ex deported? Or would you have stepped in one last time to try and protect them? Let me know in the comments. And if you stuck with me to the end, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more real-life stories.